Hello and welcome to today's presentation. Today we'll be covering a number of topics including distributed denial of service attacks, aka DDoS, ransomware, ARP poisoning and cybersecurity resources. To start with, what is DDoS? Well, a distributed denial of service attack is a malicious attempt to disrupt normal traffic of a targeted server, service or network by overwhelming it with a flood of internet traffic from multiple compromised sources. This can be achieved by using a number of botnets, which is a network of infected devices. Attackers force the target to slow down or crash, making it inaccessible for legitimate users. A good example of this was on February 28th, 2018. GitHub, a popular collaborative platform for software developers, was hit with a DDoS attack, the scale of which had never been seen before. At the time, it was the largest DDoS attack in history back in 2018. This record has since been broken, but at the time it was the largest known DDoS attack of its type to be publicly known. The attack utilized a memcached application technique, which did not actually require any botnets, allowing attackers to amplify traffic by a factor of 50,000. And absolutely no botnets in the traditional sets were necessarily required. Botnets is when you put little programs hidden about on the internet to send all the packets for you to the targeted device. This wasn't necessary for this particular attack. This attack exploits misconfigured publicly accessible servers running legit software known as memcached, an application for speeding up web servers. The exploit sent packets to the misconfigured servers by sending them tiny customized packets with the victim's address noted falsely as the source address. This triggered a response disproportionately massive in size from the misconfigured servers that went straight to the victim's servers. The attack transmitted 1.35 terabytes of data per second to GitHub's server. The security team was alerted in about 10 minutes, and it took around another 10 minutes to mitigate the attack. During this time, GitHub was briefly unavailable or experienced intermittent issues. No individual or group was publicly identified for the attack. To prevent any servers being tricked into flooding a victim server via this method, is to ensure that the servers using the memcached software, are configured correctly behind a firewall. GitHub were able to reroute the traffic through a DDoS scrubbing center, which stripped out most of the unwanted DDoS packets before routing the remaining traffic to the GitHub servers, thus restoring normal operation. When using a DDoS scrubbing center, the choice would need to be made if to use an on-demand or an always-on service. Cost would be a factor in this decision. Ransomware. Ransomware is a malicious software used to extort money from an individual or organization by encrypting or otherwise blocking access to applications or files on a computer system until a sum of money is paid. In 2017, it made world news when the European transport company Deutsche Bahn was hit with the infamous ransomware known as WannaCry. Pictures were shared around the world showing their platform timetable screens sporting the WannaCry ransom note, as seen in the slide here. The incident was part of a massive coordinated attack targeting infrastructure including the UK's NHS and companies like FedEx. Despite the disruption to passenger services in the confusion, Deutsche Bahn reported that train operations themselves were not severely disrupted. WannaCry, a ransom worm, encrypts files and demands Bitcoin payment. It had hit over 200,000 computers across 150 countries, and that's just the ones that we know that were reported. It was propagated using a vulnerability known as Eternal Blue, an exploit developed by the United States National Security Agency, aka the infamous NSA. The exploit was allegedly leaked to another group known as the Shadow Brokers, the TSB, a month prior to the attack. Microsoft had already released patches to close the exploit. Much of WannaCry spread to organizations that had not applied these patches. As this particular variant of ransomware was also a worm, it spread by itself. It did not rely on spreading further just through social engineering alone, unlike a majority of other ransomware. Keeping up with the software updates and security patches can help. Also, maintaining a decent data backup plan that includes backups stored separately, isolated from the main systems, can help with restoring after an attack. The trap in this case is that large organizations cautiously need to spend time rigorously testing updates for highly critical systems before applying them. This testing could last up to many months of testing before deployment. ARP, which stands for Address Resolution Protocol, is a network protocol used to map a dynamic logical IP address to a fixed physical MAC address within a local area network. When a device needs to find a MAC address, it broadcasts an ARP packet requesting who has this IP address, and the target device replies back with its MAC address. The MAC address is typically embedded into the hardware or firmware of a device. An IP address is software configured to connect to a particular network or subnet. ARP poisoning redirects traffic on a local area network. Attackers send forged ARP packets to link their own MAC address instead of the correctly assigned device. This is done by sending false ARP packets to redirect traffic to a compromised device, such as a false default gateway, for example. The ARP packets are modified to claim that the compromised device has the IP address of the otherwise legit device, so that passing traffic is diverted to itself instead. Such an attack can be used for a man-in-the-middle, a denial of service, or a session hijack attack. A popularly known organization was hit by ARP poisoning attack was Metasploit.com, which is a popular open source penetration testing tool project. Attackers used ARP poisoning to perform a man-in-the-middle attack by poisoning the ARP cache of the router of the ISP hosting Metasploit's online website. Attackers redirected traffic intended for Metasploit.com to a server that they controlled, allowing them to deface the site with the words "hacked by Sunware," as shown in the image. The attack demonstrated a significant breach of trust in the security-focused open source project, even though it was their ISP who has been hacked, though that distrust didn't last for long because it was their IP that was hacked and people still love using that software to this day. Some ways to avoid an ARP poisoning attack include setting up a static ARP tables. ARP tables are automatically created and updated to accommodate for changes in matching IP addresses. That's usually stored in switches, routers, etc. Manually defining certain MAC addresses to static IP addresses in the configuration of switches and routers may help to reduce the chances of an attack being successful, such as critical servers or default gateways, like give them a static address. In a large infrastructure, network isolation can help. ARP packets do not travel beyond a subnet. A large network, well divided into separate subnets, can help to reduce the impact of an ARP poisoning attack. Also, properly controlling physical access to your place of business can also mitigate an ARP poisoning attack. To perform an ARP poisoning attack, would-be attackers would need to be in physical proximity of the victim's network or already have control of a machine on the network. To cover some resources, these are resources that may increase industry awareness and may help with preventative strategies, such as the Cyber Wardens program, which offers free self-paced industry-specific training and helps small businesses build resilience. They are an Australian government-supported initiative that can be found at cyberwardens.com.au. And the Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures program, the CVE, which is an international community-based effort that identifies, defines and catalogues publicly disclosed cybersecurity vulnerabilities. They assign a number to each vulnerability that they have. They are funded by the US Department of Homeland Security and can be found at www.cve.org. And also the Australian Federal Police Cybercrime page, which can provide a number of useful videos and links about various types of threats and attacks, including what we mentioned earlier about ransomware and botnets. The address is there. It's a nice long address, afp.gov.au/crime/cybercrime. We also have some industry bodies you may be interested in, including the Australian Cyber Security Centre, which provides 24/7 monitoring, alerts and advisories. They provide information about the Essential 8 mitigation strategies as provided by the ASD as a framework for mitigating cybersecurity incidents, ASB being the Australian Signals Directorate, which is a military-based intelligence agency. They can be found at cyber.gov.au. And also the OAIC, the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner, provides guidance on preventing data breaches and complying with mandatory reporting. And there's also the ASIC, which is the Cyber Resilience Resources, which focuses on onboard driven culture and can assist with staff training, which is all very important, and they can be found at asic.gov.au. And that brings us now to our conclusion. And so the conclusion I've come up with is it is important to be aware of such threats and to try to prevent such threats. It is also very important to have contingency plans for when a threat does actually occur, regardless of your attempts to prevent them from happening in the first place. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. Here's some useful references used when creating this particular presentation. Feel free to have a look at those resources. They can be quite helpful. Thank you for your time. I bid you all a good day.